Thank you for listening to the Business and Beyond podcast.
We appreciate all of our listeners. If this is your first time listening to the Business and Beyond podcast, we hope you enjoy this episode. Episode 59 of the Business and Beyond podcast is brought to you by Hawks Event Rental Service. Coming out of a pandemic, we've all learned that there's a lot of areas of our society, our economy, our way of life that we didn't really know there were issues before, and then this pandemic brought up a lot of issues, and one of them, being it's starting to show is burnout at work, or burnout of a lot of kinds in general. We're going to talk about burnout at work. I think one reason we get burnt out a lot of stuff. Let's take sports, for example. We had that one day where it seemed like every sport just started to cancel. Rudy Gobert got COVID, and then NBA said we're going to shut down. And then the next day, a slew of other sports. And we went a few months without sports.
Yeah.
And then the end of 2020 and going into 2021, it's like we had every sport all at once going in past the... I think we had all four major sports going on in the end of the summer, and then we rolled into the Olympics in 2021, and I think we got burnt out because we went from nothing to we're consuming all kinds of sports because we didn't have it. Yeah. And that's sort of like what's happening sort of
at times,
with work burnout.
Even with us with the podcast, we get a little burnout. We really push hard, and we set some crazy goals for ourselves, and at times that can kind of burn us out, and we just get to the point, it's like we break. But when we put it in the context of work, you hope that you don't get to that burnout point when you break, because that could be catastrophic to your career, or to your home. If you just lose it and quit, then that becomes a bigger issue.
Yeah, if you get burnt out with politics, okay, I'm not going to listen to political radio today.
Or like you said with sports, okay, I'm not gonna watch sports for a while. I'm gonna
if
try
Landon
something
gets
different.
burnt out with baseball, he just takes off. I mean, you have vacation time, and some companies you even have mental health days you can take. But to some extent, you get burnt out at work. You can't just say, "Screw it, I'm not going."
So I guess the big why would be is why all of a sudden now do we see burnout and we didn't before?
I think you saw it before, but maybe it was defined differently. Like, I know a lot of people when they talk about mental health, and whether you agree with certain doctors giving prescriptions to kids for certain ADHD, ADD, things like that. You say, well, we never had that, and back in my day, that was just called being lazy or whatever. Yeah. Like, well, I'm sure there's some truth both ways, but there's a lot. The technology's advanced. The medical knowledge has advanced where we can diagnose different things. And I think back at a certain time, depression was all lumped into one big sum. And these days, you're kind of being able to sort it out.
Well, burnout isn't the clinical term for this. What they would look back, and that we read a story through the Mayo Clinic of some research they did, was that it's really a sum of depression is what burnout becomes, and it's a mental thing, but then it starts to affect you physically through the stresses you go through with it, and you get to a point you beat yourself up over whatever thing. I mean, and those are things we can get into as what really what is burnout for anyone that doesn't know. What is burnout?
Well, I think a lot of times, before we go over the definition, we can say if things go the way they're supposed to go, whether it's good or bad, you don't really, to steal a quote from the Joker in The Dark Knight, nobody bats an eye. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to happen. A lot of times people are probably feeling depressed, and they even think about maybe it's their job doing it. They go get on medication for depression.
Yeah.
But now, as the pandemic has kind of upheaved our personal, social, or work lives, and there's been a lot of stress in that. You don't know what's going to happen. Where can you go? Where can't you go? Are you going to lose your job? Is your job deemed essential? Mm-hmm. When are you going back to work? Are you working from home? And we'll talk more about that
Well,
a little
and
bit.
we
I
had a
think
lot
we've
of
seen
discussions.
a rise in depression, and then that deems, okay, this isn't right. This isn't what's supposed to happen. So people start researching and looking into it, and this is what they came up with.
Yeah, I mean, you and I talked about it a lot. I went through a whole lot of that early on. Probably not even a year into the work from home thing is, I had told you, man, this isn't fun anymore. I thought it would be cool, and it's not. And I was, at the time, didn't realize what it was, the burnout part or the depression part, but I was feeling that way, and it was, you, at one point, you couldn't leave your house. I had a job change through that, but then I also was a stay-at-home, work-from-home position. So I had that I never left. Your home and work all become one, and I went through some of that and dealt with it, and have had to find ways to kind of cope. That, like you said, we'll talk about later in the show, but it's tough, and I mean, but how does somebody even know? So some of the things you take away is, are you excited to get up and go to work? And not everyone I know it gets excited to go to work, but in most cases, I think most people wake up and are happy to have a job and to go to work. If you're just dreading it, that could be a sign of burnout. Or if you have trouble concentrating at work and staying focused at work, those can be parts of burnout. And sometimes that's what actually will cause some of your physical anguish, is when you have a hard time concentrating and you're really having to focus more energy on that to stay in it, stay working. It tends to drain your body. And you just feel, at the end of a day, you'll feel like you've been physically doing 8 hours of labor and you've just been at a computer all day, but you just feel completely beat, because mentally your mind's just been having to really work hard on overtime to keep you in and keep you involved and concentrated on the work you're doing.
Yeah, a lot of times you're just sitting at your desk, or if you're working from home, it's fun for a while. I mean, the flexibility is great sometimes, but then you realize there's a reason you don't like your office or your place of work while you're there. You come home, and that's where you can relax and digress. But when you work from home, you're not really leaving that, unless, and again, later on we'll get to different reasons how you can do that. But lots of times there's a difference between just hating your job and being burnt out.
Yeah.
So some of those things you went down, I think 90% of people are like, hey, that describes me. Maybe I'm burnt out at work. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. Maybe you just don't like your job. But I think a lot of times, you're working something, maybe you like your job, but you're working on a really big project or a really big case or something, a really big account, and you reel that in, you're doing good, everything's great, and then you just kind of go back to your day to day. It's just like in sports, when you have a really big game, especially in the NFL, you're facing your rival, you're both really good teams, you're maybe not supposed to win, you win, and then the next week you go play some crap team, it's a noon kickoff rather than a primetime game, and then you have a letdown. Because you go from really working hard, great, everything's great, and then it sneaks up on you because you think, okay, well, maybe you get burnt out if something bad happens or something negative. But no, everything's going great, then all of a sudden it's just back to day to day, and you're kind of like, what am I doing here? You're not on something really important. You're kind of questioning, what am I doing here?
I can attest to this from a personal standpoint. I deal with, I think we've talked about it in the past, is that having expectations and being able to meet those expectations. And I was in a situation, and still am in a situation that I don't know all the expectations. Even if you ask, it's just not clear what the expectations are for you. So that can lead to a lot of that, because your mind, you're gonna overwork to try to meet unknown expectations. And maybe that's an employer not giving you the expectations because they don't want you just to hit that mark and not give them more. They want to see more from you.
Yeah.
So they don't want to set a threshold. They just want you working your butt off all the time. And that's part of it too, is if you're constantly, like I said, if you're constantly putting out that extra energy and every day you feel spent mentally like that, over time that's going to build up on you and that's going to wear on you. And I went through that same situation of feeling that kind of burnout is you put it in all the time. You're constantly working, constantly battling through work. Everything's always hard. Everything's always an emergency. There's not just days that are just easy and just work. That really tends to wear on you, and nobody can sustain that. No, it doesn't matter who you are. I don't care who you are. You have to have days that are just a little bit easier than others. That whole, be able to grind and fuck all that. That's not a true thing. I mean, yes, there's going to be days you're going to grind. There's going to be days you need a rest, man. There's going to be days you need things just to go right and go your way and just have an easy day. Have a half day. Have a day that just nobody calls you, man. Just things are just good. Because otherwise you're going to, when you consistently grind like that day in and day out, it wears on you and you will burn out.
And when you work in sales and you have monthly goals, you sit there, whether you have a good month or a bad month. If you're having a bad month, the end of the month's kind of like, okay, well, now I start over at 0, get a fresh start. When you're having a really good month, you're like, well, damn,
I'm
good
fixing
job.
To start over, yeah.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah.
You did great. You hit your number, but now you're back at 0.
Start again, yeah.
And that's kind of a roller coaster, especially when it's never, okay, you have, let's just say you make easy math, $300. It's any salesman who sells $300 spending what you, but $300, roughly $10 a day. Let's just make it easy math. You're not selling $10, or I guess you kick out weekends, so that doesn't really make sense. But you're not going $10. It's the first week you'll sell nothing, and then a couple days you'll like, hey, that's half of what I was supposed to sell. That you had a good, and then you kind of slack off a little bit, then you catch back up. If you look back, you probably had 3 really productive days. And that can happen, especially when you have that roller coaster where you're catching up, and maybe the last couple of days you hit your nut, and then you make your nut, and then the next day you're like, well, damn, I worked so hard this past week just to get there. And you're thinking, well, I can do it, and you kind of slack off and relax, which, hey,
we all do it. We
all need
it.
lazy
and we
days.
all need
You
that.
all need lazy days.
Absolutely.
It's just days where you sit down and binge Stranger Things on Netflix, which is out. It's pretty good. Or just watch YouTube for no reason, just random YouTube, random TV shows. You just need to decompress and
you need to
do
recharge.
nothing.
I know this show will be posted a week later, but we're actually recording Memorial Day weekend. This is the thing I told all my guys, everyone under me, we're taking Monday off. I don't care what's coming up, what's going on. We'll put in the extra work next week if we have to.
Yeah.
But you need that one day to recharge. You have to have that. That extra besides your 2. So I wanted my guys to have a nice 3-day weekend away from work to recharge, because you need that recharge. I needed it, and I know my guys needed it.
Yeah. And we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, if you're not already burnt out on this episode, it'll be a little bit less depressing. We're going to talk about how you can avoid burnout, or if you feel like you're kind of in the middle of that knoll, kind of in that gap, in that, whatever you want, that dip, we'll tell you how to get out of it. Back here on episode 59 of the Business and Beyond podcast, burnout. I mean, I think I'm feeling a little bit of burnout right now with everything, because I had to stop and think, did I say the wrong title?
So what we don't want to do when we burn out, we don't want to excessively drink. We don't want to abuse drugs.
We'll jump it. I don't even use drugs. This is how rumors get started. No, I was thinking, did I just, as is in the middle of that, did I just say the wrong name of our podcast, thinking of my other podcast? But no, I didn't. I said it right.
I really didn't even catch it, so I hope you did.
So we will check that. We'll just we'll put an edit on there.
Right.
But no, we're on it now. We're going to talk about hey, we need to fix this. Whether you're burnt out at work or just your daily life, maybe you're stay-at-home mom.
Before we fix it, let's talk about what it could lead to if we don't fix it. It could lead to excessive stress, insomnia, which could lead to some heart issues, diabetes. I mean, there's a whole slew of health issues we get. I mean, fatigue from not sleeping well, and I personally ran into some of that, where I was so stressed about work, and we were going so hard and so fast through a time, and felt like it was work, eat, sleep, work, eat, sleep, like it was in that order. And when I would go to sleep, I would seriously have dreams about work.
Yeah.
Like I would have things running through my mind. I would have numbers, and like I was putting bids together in my sleep, and I would wake up and I never got away from it. And maybe that did create fatigue because I wasn't sleeping well.
Yeah.
And I wasn't eating well. I wasn't it just things for a little while just completely went downhill.
And that's probably something people can relate to.
Yeah.
And go down a rabbit hole, because I can definitely relate to that. I've had that, happen lots of times. But right when you said that, in a past life, when I still have my CDL, but when I was using my CDL, I was a yard hostler. You just move trailers around. I liked it. Some people, didn't like it. Like, I knew what my day consisted of. So I worked nights, 5 to like 2, 3, 4 a.m. Half the first half of the shift, I was getting, trailers ready that were going out. But then after that, I was getting the dock set up for the next day. So there was a dock number, 1 through 60, I think. And each one, every night, I had to list. It had to be a short trailer. This one's empty. This one had a 53-foot trailer. This one had to have this. And then after about a week, I remembered it. But I would get home about 7 a.m., go to sleep, and that's what I would be thinking about. I'd be like half awake, like, wait, numbers are running in my head. Hey, door 53 has to be. I remember this because it's 53-foot trailer. But no, I can totally relate, and I bet you everybody's relating. If you work in an industry or have a day where you're just dealing with numbers all day, obviously you're going to be exhausted.
Yeah.
And you're going to think about it. You're going to, whether you have a dream directly related to that or not, but you'll be, have kind of wake up in the middle of the night, be thinking, you'll be stressed out, like something's going on. I have to be doing something.
Not to get too far off topic, but I'll have my supervisor will call and maybe asking about this job or this job, asking things, and I'll be like, you know what? I really don't know. I'll have to go look. I'll have to pull it up because I have so many things going on. I can't remember. It's not a memory issue I have. I have too much stuff in my head. I can't just go and pick and pull it out of my head. I have to go physically look at it. And for me, that's really how I've gotten to where I'm dealing with the burnout better, is I'm not trying to store all this information in my head. It is what it is. It's on here. And when I can close it out, I've found a way to, in my own head, to block that out. And I don't remember anything about it until I open that file again.
Yeah. That's
helped a lot.
That brings us up into multitasking, which we should do a whole episode on. No matter what you say, it's been scientifically proven you cannot multitask effectively or at all, really. You think you can, but what you're really doing is your brain's stopping to do one thing to do something else, or it should be.
Yeah.
But if you have multiple things going, you're not doing it efficiently.
Exactly.
But studies have been shown. I think they have a number of people you can count on one hand that are genius level people that have done it, well, not even very effectively, but they can do it at like 50% effectiveness or something. So you can't be that person, but that's something that can.
That's what I've seen is pretty much, you can multitask things. But you're half-assing everything you do. You might get through a lot of stuff through the day, but in my opinion, you're half-assing everything you do. So you're not putting wholeheartedly into whatever task it is.
And you're kind of transitioning this into the number one way to get out of multitasking. Out of burnout. Let's just, because this wasn't planned, but just 1A, stop multitasking. Because that's probably causing a lot of your burnout.
Absolutely.
Set stuff away, focus on one thing. Mm-hmm. I'm one that has to check my email every time. Just click on it just to make, even if I don't do anything with it, I have to look. Because it's an emergency. It might be an emergency.
I literally have turned, and I say this now, that, the phone call turned to the text message, right? You text somebody, you expect a reply just as if you were calling them. And now, it's even evolved further to an email. If you send an email to somebody, it has become worldwide that you respond to that within minutes. Even just like you would respond to a text message or answer a phone call, people expect emails now to be responded to just like that. Where before, an email was just a little better than snail mail, where you send it, and if you get a reply within a couple days, that's good. Now, if you don't get a reply within an hour, you're sending in a follow-up. Hey, did you get my last email?
And you should have a company policy on that. I remember an old job I had, a boss would tell me, how you communicate is how urgent it is. If you call, you need an answer now. If you text, if you're going to use text, you're talking like, within a couple hours. Get it to me today. If you send an email, they may email you back right away. That's great, whatever. But you're saying, I can wait a day or two for this information. And that's how you should look at email. Honestly, if you need to know right now, pick up the phone and call. But that,
that actually brings up a point, and we're going to backtrack a little bit just before the break when we were talking about things that, how you knew you were getting burnt out. And there's another thought that came to me, and through some of the reading and things I was going through, I remember this now, that if you become impatient with your work, that's a sign of burnout. And it could be impatient with your team members, with your clients or potential clients. So that's something too. And really, think about that. I'm in that situation right now. I'm very impatient. We have a lot of jobs pending, and I'm calling these guys and emailing and texting like on a daily. Hey, I want an answer. I want an answer. I want an answer. When it doesn't matter. I've already hit all my sales goals for the year. Honestly, I mean, we're coming up on June next week, and we're only halfway through the year, and I've already hit my entire sales goal for the entire year. I could sell nothing else.
To be fair, you did that last year.
Well,
you didn't have it confirmed, but I mean, you didn't have them finalized, but you had.
They were in the bank, but so that's something though. Now that I've become very impatient with this, and I know that just as we're talking, I'm in this situation just with everyone else listening. That you're like, man, I think I'm burnt. I am. I'm in that position now, and I'm navigating through it. I'm not saying I have all the answers to fix the burnout. I'm in the same boat everyone else is. I'm working through.
Here's an answer: 1B, start a podcast and vent. Keep going. I'm just going to sit back and relax.
You're exactly right, though. That's a great point, and we haven't even talked about this. Is find a way to vent. And sometimes that calls
Karen at work.
Sometimes that's calling a friend, or sometimes your spouse ends up being that person that has to listen to you vent and bitch and complain. It could be another coworker that you guys go back and forth about it and kind of let off some steam before you let it off on your supervisor or the owner of the company.
No, I'm the same way. That I try to organize my work, but it's sitting there, and it may not be dire, but because it's sitting there, I have to finish it. I have to have nothing really. Like if I'm able to finish it, like if I'm not waiting on anything, I'm fine. Sometimes I like to wait on stuff. That means I don't have to do it right now. Like I can't do it. I'm waiting on an answer. But if I have it, I have to finish it. I have to do it.
The same way.
But no, when you said about impatience, I'm finally going to say it. Let's throw a disclaimer up here. Everything we're saying, if you use the terms loosely enough, 100% of everybody listening can say check, 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 and really pay attention to what we're saying, because everybody probably thinks they're impatient with their work. They probably feel like they're insomnia. They have insomnia. They feel like they're not getting enough sleep, and it's probably not work. It's probably you just are on TikTok too late or whatever, which you feel like you're tired. When you have everybody pretty much has a hard day. If you don't have a hard day at work, call me. I might want a job to work where you're working at. But really pay attention to what we're saying. Let's put that disclaimer out there, because I think if you're just nonchalantly listening to us, and that that's fine. You're going on throughout your day listening to us. Wait, impatience? I'm impatient at work. I don't get enough sleep at work. I'm tired.
And here's the thing.
It's like Googling your symptoms.
I typically am a little bit impatient at work. I just want to get things done. Right? I'm like, I want to check things off. I want to see accomplishment every day.
Yeah.
But
there's a reason we're doing this episode.
But I'm to a point of that impatient level that like it is really irritating to me. Like I literally get pissed off because I'm not getting answers, because I can't get these things done, because like it's at a
people are waiting on you for answers, and you're just and to be professional, you can't say, "Hey, dude, chill out. I'm waiting on an answer." You're just like, I'll get back to you when I can, and you're pissed off at the person you're waiting.
You're exactly right. So that's the irritate. When you become seriously irritated at that impatience, I think that's when they're, hey, you know what? I might be a little bit burnt out.
Okay,
so let's go back.
You get that email, or you get that email. Hey, Tony, where's my answer? I have a customer waiting on this answer, and you're still waiting on someone to get you that answer. Email them back. You're like, dude, still waiting. get back to you when I can. What do you do? You're impatient.
Straight to whoever I'm waiting on.
I thought you were about to grab that glass. I'm like,
I
whoa,
go
wait a minute.
straight to who and typically in that situation it would be a vendor, supplier, manufacturer. I'm going to them and I'm starting to chew on somebody's butt. Unfortunately for them,
that could be venting, I guess.
And that is a little bit of venting, and it's unfortunate for that level, and especially so. And we talked about it last week, with the inflation stuff and the supply chain issues. These manufacturers in this situation with people burn out, these manufacturers are really hearing it.
Yeah.
Because not only are we waiting on all these things, that now people are impatient because they're burnt out, they're starting to chew a lot of ass. So there's no wonder we're not getting what we want because, and to be honest with you, it doesn't work. Right? Being impatient and being irritated at someone isn't making your job any better. It's not making theirs any better. It doesn't accomplish anything.
Yeah.
So for all of us, myself included, I'll throw myself out there first. I'm the leader of this pack here. Is we've all got to do a better job of toning that back and finding other outlets. And mine's right here on this microphone of letting it all out. So Tuesday morning, because I'm taking Monday off for the to relax.
Oh yeah, I can tell when you're irritated when you text me, "Hey, here's our podcast topic," and it's something like, "Wow, that's something you're experiencing
right now." At this moment, I'm
sometimes
going through
I forget because we have this camera up and I can see our video feed. We're not on, we're on YouTube, and a lot of stuff we do, for our podcasters. When you said the first thing I do, you reached over, he was grabbing for his whiskey glass. I thought that's what he was going to say. Like I just grabbed the bottle and I started drinking. Which we mentioned an issue and another disclaimer. We like to drink on the Business Beyond podcast, see on YouTube.
But if you are going to, go ahead and pick up a bottle of TX whiskey.
Unofficial sponsor. They don't know they're a sponsor yet.
It's still my favorite.
But we never abuse alcohol on this. And you'll never know because we pour off screen, so you don't know how many we've had. But another thing you can do, I like to think of when you have an issue... And when you stress out, it works in all areas of life, not just for your professional career. Think about how long am I going to have this as an issue? Like, not how long am I going to... you have an issue and you may not know when you're going to get an answer to, but just think, tomorrow, is this going to be an issue? A year from now, is this going to be an issue? And then it really puts it in perspective. Like, don't stress out about it too much. Like, obviously, you have to give it the attention it deserves. There's some level of stress there. I'm one when I don't know. Like if you could tell me, the vendor's going to tell me, "Hey, I'm going to have you an answer at 8:00 tomorrow." Stress off because I know, hey, I'll have it then. But if you don't tell me that, I'm just telling the guy, "Hey, as soon as I get an answer,
it's this week
you'll
or
have
maybe
an
it's
answer."
next week. Yeah.
So, a lot of the times is don't do something that's going to affect it long. So you have an issue next week. Is that going to be an issue? No. Then don't do something that's going to make it,
Yeah.
You're talking about being mad at your boss.
Don't create issues that aren't
there.
You
want to chew somebody out. You want to chew your boss out. Well, maybe you chew your boss out and then the issue's not going to be an issue next week. But chewing your boss out turns out to be an issue, whether it be awkwardness, you get reprimanded, or even fired.
Yeah.
So you ever heard the thing, write a letter to somebody and, put it in your desk and read it 2 days later? That's like... You know what you want to say? Well, have that conversation in the car with yourself. So go ahead and chew out your boss in the car on your way home, and you get home and you're done.
And one of my coworkers, we do the same thing. Is when in the heat of the moment, we type up an email. Don't add a to anything. Just go to the body and just start typing. Just going out everything you want to say, bullet points, chewing them out, whatever you want to put out there. Right?
Save it as a draft,
and we save it, and then we go back and we read it.
If you want to send it later,
we do it. We do it at different times. So we'll read it, an hour later. Okay, put it back, read it back, and then we'll even with my coworker, we will read it to each other. Like we'll get on the phone and be like, "Hey, let me read this email. Tell me what you think." You'll read it, and they're like, that's pretty strong, but but we take the time. We don't just send it off really quick, right? We go through this process. That way, we're calm. When we get ready to actually put together the email, we typically delete that whole email and just start over with something a little more appropriate that ends up essentially getting the same message across, just not quite as harsh, I guess.
And sometimes you're calm and you want to send an email, which needs to be sent. You're not necessarily mad, but it's like, okay, we need to get a point across to this person. And there's certain people in your company, you have to word things a certain
Yeah.
way, or hey, they're sleeping with the boss or whoever, because they got their job meeting somebody at a old job I used to have. So you would send it to your work buddy, your work wife, whoever you want to, your person. It's like, hey, does this sound like I'm being a dick or something like that? Like you're sending a company email. Who cares? You're like, hey.
Well, most of the time, my coworker and I will look at it and be like, I'd send it. Fuck it.
and they'll send it back. They're like, yeah, but use this word instead because the first thing. And you got to be wary of that. Sending email. We went back to social media etiquette. We should do email etiquette. I don't know if we could do a whole episode on that. But some things, if you really need to vent, call them and tell them so they don't have the proof later. Right. When maybe it's not that big a deal, but you get it to that certain loss.
So that's one of the points that we're getting at is seek support in this, to get through your burnout. Seek support. Get somebody else to kind of help. Maybe, I don't know if this is the right term, but to take a little burden off of you, right? To take a little of that pressure that you feel. Let them kind of help walk you through it. Because
sometimes you feel like you're the only one experiencing it, and whoever you're feeling anguish against, usually your boss, is just sitting there all cocky, all happy, just send it to Tony, send it to Ashton. They'll do it. They don't care. They're not. And you want to just, you're like, please call me and ask me this, and I'm just gonna go off on you. And usually it's good to have that person to level you out and kind of pull you back and show perspective that, hey, everyone's dealing with this. Your boss is probably going through the same thing.
And sometimes they don't realize what they're doing. And you have to think. And how many it's times not like they're sitting back just like, watch this.
How many times do you send an email and you're like, should I send this? I kind of sound like I'm a jerk. I don't want to, but it has to be done. Maybe they're doing it. How do you're like, man, Ashton's not going to like this. That's the thing with sending email and text. It's so personalized. It takes it out of context. How many times did you text your spouse and they go back? They're like, well, that's aggressive. You're like, what? I was just... And then you're like, oh, yeah, if you read it like that.
So, also try to relax. Try a relaxing activity. That could probably help. I know one part, especially working from home, and I know you've gone through this, is taking lunch. How many times are we sitting, especially at home, and you're just work. You skip lunch, you go through, you don't even...
Go in the kitchen, make a sandwich, come and eat at my desk.
But it's at your desk while you're still working. You don't disconnect from work at all.
At my last job, when I worked... Or not my last job, 2 jobs ago, when I worked in the office, I would eat at my desk or whatever and just kind of deal with stuff. But we socialized a lot. I like the people I worked with.
You had a lot of downtime between work.
And it was different than now, which is kind of the same. I could just do whatever. Obviously, this is where I work in my space when I work from home. It's kind of... I work in the truck. I sometimes go in the office now. As you can see in the background, or on-air TV. I could turn something on there. But my last job, my true last job, was a true work-from-home position. There was nothing. I mean, there were times I could go out in the field, but for the most part... home office was in Wisconsin. I wasn't going to the home office every day. So this is where I worked every day most of the time. And I had to get out of here. Mm-hmm. I hang out here a lot more than I used to. I understand what you would say it. And then I got in here. I'm like, I can't come in here after I'm done with work. Mm-hmm. Because
that was part of when we moved the studio here. We would... I worked in the last studio we had.
Yeah.
We had our podcast in the studio. And I also ran a small business on the side out of that studio.
You were always in there.
And, I was trying to build it into a place like we kind of liked, like with a TV and a place we'd want to hang out. Man
cave.
Which I really didn't enjoy that. I didn't like being in there.
You didn't want to be in there.
Through some of the things we're talking about, I've gotten better about that. Now I've actually completely rehauled, like the whole thing's been redone, the office, that it could still be for podcasting, but it's very much so a good man cave type hangout.
You need different space. It's a good you place. Can't sit in the same spot you sit in when you work.
Exactly.
Different chairs.
And it's somewhere else that I can chill out.
But this whole point is break it up. Break up your day. I know I would, my last job, I had times I went for walks the same time every day. I would come in here. I'd come in here pretty early and kind of half-ass kind of get, I didn't have to start at a certain time, but I'd be in here at, whether I take the kid to school or whatever, I'd be in here at 7:30, 8 o'clock, just kind of emails good, just make sure nothing's going on, planning my day out at a podcast going in, refilling coffee, and then I kind of started at 9, and then broke it up at about 10:30, 11, go for a walk. Just do a loop around my neighborhood, come back. Then you had it broken up. Okay, I'm going to work for another hour, then it's lunchtime. And I'm going to work for another hour, and then I have to go do this or do another walk. Or working from home is a great deal, but you have to be prepared. Like, people told me when I got my CDL, trucking is a lifestyle change.
Oh.
Working from home, it's a bit exaggerated. It is kind of a lifestyle
really
change
is.
because you don't have that hour into work to kind of really get prepared. But more importantly, you don't have that hour or whatever your commute is. Coming back home, you may be frustrated and stressed out, but really, that's transitioning from work to home time. Because when you're in your work mind and you walk 50 feet and you're in your house, that's not a good transition. You still have work, and it's hard to really relax.
Well, and for me, my office is directly in my home, not like yours is separate, a separate building. But I do struggle with that, because you take all the stresses that you have for work are still built into your home, or still built into an area that we very much so as a family still use, with a home computer in there, and a lot of the charging devices, whether it's speakers for the home or whatever it is, all those items are in the office. So we really deal with that a lot, that you have to intermingle in the office workspace. And there's times I go in there, I'm like, you know what, I need to check my work phone, make sure I don't have a missed call. It's 7 or 8 o'clock at night. Well, let me just make sure nobody called me. Something I need to follow up on, that, and those are things that you do have to deal with and have to try to create a disconnect. But like you said, I would do the same. I would usually around lunchtime, I would go and I would make something for lunch. I would try to stay out of the office, eat my lunch relatively quickly, and I would go for a walk to get fresh air and sun. And that's the biggest thing I could tell people. I know it sounds redundant that we would both go on walks, but for me, especially if you're working in the home, because you do so many things in your home, is try to get out and get some fresh air, get sunlight, let your body build some of that energy. I know we both do the same. We take our kids to school and we pick our kids up. If it allows you to do that if you work from home, I would absolutely recommend that you do that. That you get out and you try to go pick your kids up. For me, that was great, because that was the time that I just said, hey, I'm stopping. I'll take my phone with me. If I have to take a call in the truck, I will. Yeah. I'm going to go pick my kids up. I'm going to spend 15 minutes, sitting in the pickup line waiting for my kids. We'll get them home, get them settled, get them going on things, and then I'll try to get back in and finish out my day, whatever that is. If that's, another half hour, another hour, 2 hours, whatever that ends up being, at least until my wife gets home.
And the same when you work in an office or you go into work is when people would eat lunch at their desk, they're like, no, it's fine. In case things get crazy, I'm like, no, that's the reason you need to, because that's fine. I don't expect you, if the phone's ringing off the hook, I don't expect you to jump in. But if you're going to, that's why you need to just go sit in your car.
Yeah, I want you to have a break so when you come back,
if you're not going to go
refreshed.
somewhere, go sit in your car. I had a guy, he would eat at his desk, and then he'd just go sit in his car for 30 minutes. He's like, I'm going to watch whatever on Netflix, so I want that break. I don't want to waste my time eating. So he eats, on his normal time, and then goes sits in the car for 30 minutes. You need that a breakup, because I don't care what you do. If you work on a garbage truck and you're just going and you have that time when, whether there's an ice storm like we've had recently where you can't go, or a holiday, like I know we have Memorial Day coming up. I don't know if our trash guys are coming, but I know if they skip a day on Thursday when we have ours picked up, but I know all week those guys are, which I get a lot of people are going to have busy weeks this week because they had off. But when you don't have it, you don't even think of it. You take it for granted, but you just have that. Like, of course, you're going to have your 30-minute break for lunch and probably 2 15-minute breaks or hour break for lunch, whatever you have. But it's just that 30 seconds of just stopping, taking a breath. You don't think about it until you're going, and you're in a mode, and you're like, no, I'm great. I can keep going. And then you stop. You're like, holy crap, what did I just do? That's what can be for burnout. Like, if I get, laziness is trying to get in the mood to do something. If you're doing it, I could go and go. If I go to the gym, once I'm at the gym, I'm like, if no one's rushing me, if I don't have to get back, like last night I went to the gym at like 9 o'clock. Like, I have nothing to, like, should I do a different, I could stay there and work out all night, but it's getting the courage, or not the courage, but getting the motivation to go to the gym. But once I'm done, like, man, I stayed at the gym for a lot longer than I was. That kicked my ass. I was like, and you don't think about it because when you're doing
something
it,
else would be
you
very.
can go.
It's very important to try to set just like with work, is try to set schedules. So whether it's you taking, even if you can't take a lunch break, if that becomes a busy time, I know for me that becomes a busy time because the company I work for is based in California. So when it's lunchtime here, it's like mid-morning for them. It's the meat of the day for them. They really have a lot going on. So I tend to get interrupted a lot at lunch. So for me, I get started very early. 6:37. I'm starting before I have to take kids to school. After I take the kids to school and I get home, that's usually when I'll make a breakfast. If I haven't already made a coffee, I'll go ahead and make coffee. I'll go outside and water a few plants. I'll spend 5, 10, 15 minutes just doing something different, trying to get my mind off of work, and then I'll come back. The same in the afternoons with picking kids up, but in trying to break the day up and have a routine that's good for me, that I enjoy. But also for me, I really like to have music going if I'm not on the phone, or a podcast going. Even if I'm not really engaged with the podcast, just hearing that in the background kind of helps, especially for somebody working from home, because part of the burnout factor is being there just by yourself. You don't feel like you have a team to work with, like when you're in the office. Like you were saying, when you have times you can jack around, you have times you can be a little disengaged because you have, what do they call it, water cooler talk, and
and when you're in the office
like
jacking around, and when you're at home jacking around, kind of like getting on Facebook, or you do it even when you're at work, there's a different guilt factor there. When you're at home, you're like, gosh, I really need to get to work. When I'm at work, if my boss isn't walking down the phone, like, I'm going to scroll through Facebook, through Twitter. But
it really is a different mindset.
It kind of goes in the same way of breaking up your day, but block your day out. And if you can, block it where, okay, for this hour, 2 hours, or whatever, I'm doing this, and no matter what happens, like, I'll have my phone there, obviously if your wife calls or whatever, it may be emergency, or I guess if your boss, depending. But you really have to limit it and not just answer your phone just because it's ringing. When you work in sales, you say, okay, I'm going to prospect from here to here, and I'm not going to answer my phone unless you think it's emergency, but just ignore your phone because you're making calls. Because if you stop that and you're not making call after call after call, or emailing or research or whatever you do when you're prospecting, you stop, like, okay, I'll answer this call. Oh yeah, I'll take care of that for you. Do that. You're kind of jacking around. Then you have to get back in like I was talking about, the motivation. Once you're doing something, I don't think it's hard to keep doing it. Once you start reading, once you get a couple of pages in, you can read for 2 hours if you don't have anybody interrupting you.
It's that motivation to get started.
It's just getting into it. And side tip, if you need motivation to do something, tell yourself, okay, I'm going to do that, but I'm going to do that for 5 minutes. Typically, you can convince yourself to do it for 5 minutes. And if you're already doing it after that 5 minutes, you're going to keep doing it if it's worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, hopefully,
in conclusion,
if you're burnt out, hopefully we're not depressing you with this. Hopefully we're giving you really good information. But help us from not burning out and just going through the motions. Go ahead and, whether you're on YouTube or one of our podcasting platforms, subscribe, follow, like this page, like this episode, and comment.
If you are feeling a little bit burnout, reach out to us.
Absolutely.
We can, comment on any of the social media platforms we have on YouTube. I believe even on all the podcasting, you can possibly send comments.
Everything.
Shoot us an email. It's all in the description below. But, reach out to us if you're feeling a little burnout, or if you have some ideas of how you can become less burnout that we didn't mention.
Yeah, I promise you, anyone who comments, we will get back to you in a timely fashion. Any way you could possibly think to get a hold of us, all in the description box below. Social media, everything. So,
until next time. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for listening. Thank you again for supporting the Business and Beyond podcast.
Be sure to hit the subscribe button to be alerted every time we post a new episode.